Hi there. Please keep in mind this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. The information and education provided are not intended or implied to supplement or replace professional medical treatment, advice, and/or diagnosis. Hi, welcome back to the Nutrition Scoop. I'm Ashley, a registered dietitian, and here at the Nutrition Scoop, we serve you science-backed insights to help you take control of your health. Yep, that's right. And today's episode, we're going to talk all about your gut, your second brain, and the command center of your immune system, metabolism, and so much more. So I really want to go over what gut health really means, how it impacts your body, and simple ways to support it through diet and lifestyle. And so we're going to do a little intro on the gut microbiome first. So what is that? The gut microbiome is the community of microorganisms living in your gastrointestinal tract, such as fungi, bacteria, and viruses. And a person's genetics really shapes the composition of their gut microbiome in tandem with diet and lifestyle. So basically, your gut microbiome is being built as a function of genetics and environmental factors, and basically how you feed your gut. When we talk about microorganisms, especially when we're saying things like fungi and bacteria and viruses, one thing that might come to mind is, oh gosh, that may be bad for me, right? It's bacteria. The reality is that there's a difference between good bacteria and bad bacteria. Okay, so bad bacteria is what we typically think of when we talk about bacteria in general. Those are microorganisms that cause illness, so they're not supposed to be in our body. That being said, there are also good bacteria. So good bacteria are microorganisms that help our bodies digest food and absorb nutrients, and they produce several vitamins in the intestinal tract. So vitamins like folic acid, niacin, vitamins B6 and B12. And essentially our microbiomes consist of this good bacteria. And this good bacteria can actually offer a protective benefit against the bad bacteria. So it's like your little immune system in your gut. Now, when we talk about the gut microbiome, sometimes an interchangeable term is gut flora. And our gut flora or our microbiome really aids in digestion, immunity, and mental health, as I mentioned at the start of this session. And so we'll talk about all the ways it does that. But I think one important statistic is that our human gut contains hundreds trillion thousands of organisms, and around 70 to 80% of the immune system resides in our gastrointestinal tract. So the gut microbiome is extremely important in regulating our health and wellness. And so that's why it's really important how you feed your gut. That's why nutrition is so critical. So I want to go into how exactly does our gut health impact our bodies. You may have heard of the gut-brain axis, and the gut-brain axis is essentially talking about how our gut speaks to our brains. And there is definitely communication going on there. And that's why if your gut health isn't optimal, you may be more susceptible to mood swings or mood disorders. So think about anxiety, depression, cognition, like think about brain fog. Like sometimes that might have something to do with what's going on in your gut. And so that's one connection that has been well documented. There's also a gut-skin connection. So when we think about skin conditions such as acne, eczema, psoriasis, there's some research that suggests that what's going on in our gut has an effect on those conditions as well. Now, if we also want to get into other ways that our gut health impacts our whole body wellness, we need to think about, okay, metabolism, weight, and blood sugar. Is there any connection there? And the reality is there actually is. So a 2019 study found that individuals with greater microbial diversity, so basically more diversity going on in their microbiome, there are more microorganisms, there are many different types. Those types of people had a lower risk of obesity and type 2 diabetes. So basically, the more robust that their microbiomes were, the more benefit it had against developing or lowering their risk of developing obesity obesity and type 2 diabetes. We also know that there may be some autoimmune and inflammatory protection associated with our gut microbiome. And again, I talked about the gut-brain axis. There are studies that show people with depression often have lower gut microbiome diversity. So really how diverse the microorganisms are in our gut, meaning how many different types of microorganisms do we have, how many of them are there, how many of them are working and communicating together. Those are all important in terms of imparting health benefits. So what are signs that perhaps your gut may be struggling? So some common symptoms of gut challenges, or the fact that maybe your microbiome is not optimal. We call this dysbiosis, like something's going on that's disrupting the health of your microbiome. So when dysbiosis is present, physically, there are certain manifestations that indicate that's going on, such as bloating, constipation or diarrhea, brain fog, cravings, especially for sugar. So when you are craving a lot of sugar, that may be an indication that something's going on with your gut microbiome. Are they robust? Are they functioning properly? Are they healthy? Is it diverse enough? And then other signs that your gut may be struggling include skin issues and chronic fatigue. So I think when you are having some of these symptoms, it's not necessarily wise to jump and say, okay, something's wrong with my microbiome. Instead, you want to create a mini checklist for yourself. So if you've been noticing 3 or more of those symptoms regularly, your gut might be trying to tell you something. And so really pay attention to your body, right? Like, are you having bloating and constipation, but at the same time, you're craving sugar a lot? Maybe there's something going on with your gut, okay? Now, I'm a registered dietitian, so I also want to know, like, how does our nutrition impact our gut microbiome? Well, there are foods that help versus hurt the microbiome. So in terms of gut boosting foods, so the foods that are going to really help your microbiome thrive, you want to think about consuming fermented foods. So that's like yogurt, kefir, kimchi, sauerkraut, or prebiotics. So foods with prebiotics. Prebiotics are foods that feed the gut microbiome, that feed the microorganisms in our gut. So prebiotic foods include garlic, onions, leeks, oats, asparagus. And then there are also fiber-rich foods that will help our microbiomes. And think of veggies, fruits, but particularly fiber-rich plants, so leafy green, lentils, beans. That being said, there are gut disrupting foods. So ultra-processed foods are thrown in there, right? Like, we know that it's not best to have our diet primarily consist of ultra-processed foods. Now, most foods are processed to some extent, unless you're eating a whole fruit or raw veggies, like there's going to be some processing involved in your food, right? But you don't want the ultra-processed foods, the ones that have many ingredients and have to go through many processes to break those ingredients down and combine them together in order to produce that food. So you may think of like certain baked goods or certain cereals, certain candies, candy bars, things like that. Those ultra processed foods you want to be wary of because they can actually harm our gut microbiome, right? They're not feeding the microorganisms, they're challenging them. And so any foods also with excess added sugar. So there's certain foods that are just naturally have sugar in them. So you may think of fruits, and some people are scared of fruits because they're like, oh, it has sugar. But fruits have an abundant amount of fiber, which again helps feed our good bacteria in our gut. And so I wouldn't be scared of fruit, but foods with excess added sugar. So when companies or like people add sugar to their foods, that's what you want to be wary of, not the naturally occurring sugars. But foods with excess added sugars are also going to disrupt our gut. You may also want to limit artificial sweeteners. Now, there's a lot of discourse around this, right? So at the end of the day, if you have a certain medical condition, namely diabetes, consuming artificial sweeteners versus regular table sugar or like standard sugar is going to be more helpful for you than anything else, right? Like for other people who don't have diabetes, consuming artificial sweeteners doesn't need to be part of their diet. But if you need to limit how much sugar you're consuming because of insulin resistance, right? Like your body's not able to process the sugar effectively, and so your blood sugar levels remain elevated. Consuming artificial sugars, that is a prudent choice. Like, it's not unwise to switch from regular sugar to artificial sweeteners if you have diabetes or any other condition where that's suggestive of some insulin resistance, right? Like some people who have PCOS or polycystic ovarian syndrome may also want to opt for artificial sweeteners because there's a correlation between that and insulin resistance sometimes. So that's something to be mindful of. And then heavy alcohol use. So alcohol is a toxin, right? And if you are consuming an abundant amount of alcohol, that is going to disrupt your healthy gut bacteria. So your microbiome is going to be challenged by heavy alcohol use. So according to the American Gut Project, which is an academic journal, people who ate 30 plus plant varieties per week had significantly more diverse gut microbiomes than those who ate 10 or fewer. So that means the more plants you consume, so the more you rely on like a plant-based diet, the better that is for your gut microbiome, the better that is for your gut health. And so we know that there are many benefits of following a plant-based diet. And one of the principal benefits is the way that it feeds your gut in a very helpful way so that your gut health is thriving. So what are some lifestyle habits that can support gut health? How does stress impact the gut and vice versa, right? We talked about the gut-brain axis, right, previously. And so we know that our guts and our brains are communicating. And if you are stressed, right, your brain is obviously processing that. And then you might have some physical manifestations of that stress. And many times people feel that in their gut, right? They might feel a stomach ache, or they might feel extra bloating when they're stressed, or they might even feel like a little nauseous or develop a headache or something. Our gut is very important. It's very important for helping us not only regulate stress, but respond to it as well. So it's almost like a natural response. If you're very stressed, your gut is trying to send you signals like, let's find a way to reduce this because this is not helping you physically or mentally. And therefore, there's also like an important role that sleep plays in all of this as well. So you really want to aim to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. And I know that you hear that all the time probably, but we know that sleep is regenerative, right? Like it helps us restore our bodies in the morning. So overnight, it's really helpful to get that 7 to 8 hours of sleep, but it also has an impact on our gut health. So the better quality sleep that we get, the better that we're supporting our gut health. And so sometimes people will say, okay, I slept 7 to 8 hours at night, but they're not really getting deep sleep, or they're waking up a lot in the middle of the night. And that is not necessarily considered high quality sleep. And in those instances, your gut can be challenged too, because your gut needs to restore itself. And if you're not getting that deep sleep with that deep circadian rhythm, your gut health is going to be challenged. Now, regular physical activity. So the more physically active that you are, the more you're stimulating your gut. I don't know if after exercising, you ever feel like running to the bathroom, or after very long walks, but that's because when you exercise, when you engage in physical activity, it actually stimulates the colon and like your whole gastrointestinal tract. So it's really great to exercise for multiple reasons, but once again, it does support gut health. Now, we talked about all the different foods that can support gut health. So sometimes foods alone might not be optimal. Like some people do need supplements. So many of my patients come and they say, listen, around my period, I really get bloated and I don't know why. And sometimes it just means like maybe their gut health needs like their microbiomes need like a little boost during those periods of time. And so I do occasionally recommend a supplement, and certain supplements have specific microorganisms or strains of good bacteria that can help stimulate our microbiomes if you take them regularly. And that can help alleviate some of the bloating during certain periods of the month for many women. And then also there are folks who have chronic disruptions of their microbiome, like maybe they have irritable bowel syndrome and they're constantly dealing with things like diarrhea or constipation. Sometimes it's in response to foods. So there are certain foods that trigger those symptoms. And sometimes it's stress, right? And other times it's just not clear exactly what it is, but some people just chronically have diarrhea or constipation. And sometimes they switch back and forth between those symptoms. So that's an indication that our guts need more support. And obviously changing your diet, eating a lot of plant-based foods and foods with the prebiotics in them can really help. Fermented foods can too. I have a patient who now drinks kefir after having months of terrible diarrhea, and that really helped them improve their condition. Now, is this to say that they never have loose stools anymore? No, but it does mean that their gut clearly needed a little extra boost of probiotics to heal. And others may need like a supplement in the form of like a pill or a powder that they mix in with water or their smoothies that again help support their gut health when food alone is not enough. So a 2021 study in Gut Microbes, another journal, showed that moderate aerobic exercise 3 times per week improved microbial diversity and gut barrier function in people. So what does that mean? It just means that once again, that physical activity plays a key role in stimulating your gut and keeping your gut healthy. Your microbiome loves exercise. Now, let's do a summary here and talk about key takeaways. So your gut affects far more than digestion, right? It has an effect on your mental health, on your immunity, and your metabolism. So it's really a major player in all of those things. And it's important that when we think about our gut health, that we're thinking about all the different systems and all the different organs in our body that are connected to it. And so that means your brain, that means your skin, that means like the way that you may be feeling physically and emotionally, right? It may be the way that you are feeling confident about the way you look, right? Because like if your skin is erupting, if you're getting, I know I have clients who have both either psoriasis or eczema, and sometimes they're a little self-conscious. And so they want to know what can they do, maybe in addition to some medical intervention to help them really have clearer skin and improve their confidence. So your gut affects so much, and it's really important that you prioritize it. My challenge for you, if you're watching this, is to try to add at least 5 new plant-based foods to your meal this week to feed your good gut bacteria. And so we talked about the different foods that are helpful. So fiber-rich foods. So think of your leafy vegetables and your prebiotic foods as well. So your onions, your garlics. Really try to get that into your routine and challenge yourself to boost your gut health. And then if you have a question about gut health, because this topic could go on forever, please DM me or email me and I'll do a future Q&A session with gut health. I think it's a fascinating subject. The research is growing here. And again, we see that it affects so much in our bodies and in our minds. So please stay tuned for the next nutrition scoop. I'm going to talk about another hot topic. Stay tuned. But until then, please like, subscribe, comment. It really helps my channel and getting this information out there. I really appreciate your support, and I'll see you next time. Bye.